mining place. And a ball maiden was a term to describe young women who worked at the Cornish mine, above ground, dressing ores and picking up the high grade. Hard to imagine in a place that now is totally superstitious to have people, have women of any kind working in the mines. At one time actually had some women in early placer mines here in Butte. And those 5 women could have very easily have been those 5 women could have easily have been ball maids. This is a picture out of Cornwall.
Wow.
This movement of women working in the mines goes all the way back to 1770 in Cornwall. So there's really no reason in the world why some of those early women, if they were actually doing placer mining here in Butte, could have actually been with the husband or of Cornish extract. Still looking at an area in Centerville. In 1867, there were no buildings where the town site of Butte is now located. However, at this time, placer operations continued up the northern portion of the Missoula Gulch, and those placer minings were booming. Now again, here's Missoula Gulch, which stretches all the way up to Centerville, playing an active part in the early formation of Butte. The northern portion of Missoula Gulch became the west boundary of the present-day Centerville, as well as the northern boundary between present-day Centerville and Walkerville. Missoula Gulch ran from the top of the hill, down the hill, and crossed into the present-day Park Street. Number 3, item about Centerville. The first permanent school in Butte was built in 1885 at the east end of Mullen Street in Centerville. This is called the Adams School. A lot of people, when I've been in Butte now, I came back, and I've been here for about 12 years. A lot of people had never ever heard of this. The Adams School at the end of Mullen Street was the first school. An earlier school was established by a Colonel Wood in 1866, but it was a private school, and it was semi-permanent. This was a public school, actually sponsored by the Butte School District. This is a present site of where that school used to be. This is Mullen Street, going right through here. And at the end of Mullen Street, this is the hoist house of the Mountain Calm Mine.
Oh, wow.
So Mullen Street ends right here, and in this area right here is where the Adams School is. I had 2 great aunts that attended the Adams School. It was only in operation for maybe about 4 years. The land underneath the Adams School was extremely valuable as far as the Anaconda Company was concerned. And so it wasn't too long before, 3 or 4 years, the Adams School was taken down, and a new school called West Centerville School, which ended up being the Blaine School, was built. But the important thing there is the Anaconda Company was interested in the minerals below the school, so the school had to go. 4th item about Centerville. Centerville was sometimes known as Little Cornwall because of the Cornish inhabitants. Centerville was one of the few ethnic neighborhoods left standing in Butte. Most of the others have totally disappeared with the pit. No longer do we have a Finntown, Meaderville, Dublin Gulch, or McQueen. Let's look at early Centerville and the early mining in the area. The origin of the emergence in the area known as Centerville remain unknown, with the exception of the placer mining activities that I listed above. However, official documented references are made to the Centerville area on maps and in city directories as early as 1880. The origin of the name Centerville is also not known. However, I'm sure miners working in this area considered this the center of the Butte mining district. Remember, Centerville sits almost in the middle of the Butte Hill. Walkerville, north of it, and Butte proper, undeveloped, sits below it. Although first known placer workings in Centerville in 1666 to 67 were doing pretty good, the life was gloomy, and the progress of the camp was continually up and down. By 1867, the placer had given out completely. Smelting was a problem. Although bellows were used for a blast, proper methods to smelt the ore were not available. From 1869 to 74 was a downward progress of the camp. Nearly everyone left the district, with the exception of a small band of miners clinging to the latest possibility of the camp as quart producer. Everything else was silent. This small group continued to perform their necessary representation work despite sacrifices and hardships. All efforts were directed toward a quest of quartz ores, but the old questions of insufficient melting rendered all of their labors unprofitable. Then, in 1874, a man named William Farlin, F-A-R-L-I-N, took some Butte ore to Hawaii, Idaho for assay. And at that time, of course, you realize there was no way to have ore assayed here in Butte. It had to be taken out of state. It assayed rich in precious metals and carried some copper. Farlin returned to Butte in 1874, retained his assay secret, and waited until the January 1st deadline of the succeeding year, at which time a new congressional act relating to forfeiture of unrepresented mining claims came into being. Immediately, Farlin jumped to claims at the Travonia, the Late Acquisition, the Burlington, and the Great Republic. In addition, he obtained claims at the Alice in Walkerville and the La Plata in the Centerville area. The community of Centerville grew around the mines. Miners were first lured to the silver mines up the hill in Walkerville, and later to the large copper mines to the east of the hill. This is Centerville. This man is probably standing right where the old Buffalo mine was. Let's go up here. This is the Trinity Church. This is the Sons of St. George. This is coming down Main Street here. This is the Mullen, the old Mullen house, and through here. And then down here would be the B&P Railroad. But this is Centerville in one of the earliest pictures. This is the area that I'm going to talk about here. This is North Main Street. Oh, hang on, let me go back. This is North Main Street, West and East Center Street, and La Plata Street. And at one time, this was the center of Centerville. These are some of the things that originally were up there at what time. And this was really the center when you had Walkerville above it and Butte below it, and some of the things that they had. Okay. The men who patented the mining claims and platted the additions within the area to be known as Centerville came from a wide variety of endeavors. They were miners, carpenters, lawyers, bartenders, and court clerks. Prominent Butte men invested in Centerville properties beginning in 1879. They were speculating on Butte's newfound riches in copper. Men such as W. Eggert Smith, who was Butte's postmaster, who along with Harry Kessler filed on the Smith and Kessler edition, which is one of the popular editions in Centerville. Charlie Warren, who was clerk of the district court, and Lee Mantle, his law partner, who patented the limited load on North Main, again, North Main Street, along with W.A. Clark and Robert Taft. These constituted some of the more prominent Centerville land speculators. So the minute the mines come in, all of a sudden, everybody's not only looking for minerals, they're also looking for land, because they know that miners will be living around the mines. In 1877, several enterprising miners, including Dennis Leary, John Downs, filed on the La Plata lode, very popular lode in Centerville, anticipating its growing value as a potential home site within walking distances of the mines. By 1880, Centerville began to grow. Population was approximately 3,000. The separate mining camps now blend with the center of Silver Bow County, and Centerville becomes one of the neighborhoods within the area. It's an ethnic enclave of a large number of Irish and Cornish families, ringed by 8 mines. Among those, the Mountain Con, West and East Grey Rock, Little Mina, Green Mountain, Diamond, Cora, Bell, Buffalo, Poland, and Graven. Other neighborhoods emerged at this time. Other neighborhoods that emerged at this time were Walkerville and Meaderville. The Cornish tended to settle in the Hungry Hill area of Meaderville. Anybody know where the Hungry Hill area of Meaderville is? As close as I can determine, it's on the hills. Oh, I'm sorry.
Wasn't it in the Gulch? Above Dublin Gulch, wasn't it? Right above Dublin Gulch?
I'm trying to find out. The one report I've had is that the Hungry Hill was behind the Leonard Mine in Meaderville. Does that ring a bell with anything? Anyway, that was one area where the Cornish settled in Meaderville. See, no matter what neighborhood they were in, they had certain areas to center in. Hungry Hill is what they list as it being in Meaderville. There might have been another one in Dublin. I'm not sure. Centerville at this time was 50% Irish and 50% Cornish. I always thought that Centerville was 100% Cornish until I started to do research. And it isn't. It had as many Irishmen in it as it had Cornish. Meaderville was a mixture. Meaderville did have a lot of both Cornish and Irish, but it also had other nationalities. And what was attractive to Meaderville were the Welsh immigrants, because they had worked in the smelters in Wales, and were attracted to coming to Meaderville and the smelters that they had down there. By 1885, the population had mushroomed to 1,400. These suburbs on the hill grew because of the demand to be close to the places of work, mostly within walking distance. Travel was one of the main drawbacks of early Butte because of the severe incline of the hills that had to be climbed to get to work. Main Street was a straight shot, Walkerville, then Centerville, and then to Butte proper. One passes through one city. Walkerville became an incorporated town in 1890. This was in the paper not too long ago. This is actually, Main Street. There is a turn up in here, but it's actually a straight shot from Walkerville, Centerville, down through Butte proper. As the Anaconda Mining Company grew to control all newly mining sites, including the Mountain Con, small plots of land were leased to miners to live within walking distance of the mine sites that would employ them. These early residents understood that Centerville residential plots of land were temporary, as the company would undoubtedly expand mineral extrapolation across the hill demolishing all company-owned homes in the process. In turn, Centerville residents neglected much-needed repairs and substandard living conditions were widely accepted. I can remember my family telling me that we did not own a house that we lived in, that the company owned it. I think they were saying 6 feet under it belonged to the company. So there was never a true sense of home ownership because you always felt that the company owned the house and the company could take the house whenever they wanted to and you would lose it. And consequently, people didn't do a lot of fixing up and painting up and so on because never ever knowing when the house would no longer be theirs. There was some growth in the neighborhoods, but not extensive expansion of the neighborhoods. Centerville continued to be known as a working class neighborhood shared between two major ethnic groups identified as the Cornish and the Irish. The Cornish man, or the Cousin Jack, was raised in a mining trade in Cornwall and was recognized as a skillful foreign miner that came to these shores. He was in fact the miner's miner. Hard times had driven him from his tin and lead mines in Cornwall. Higher wages, not dreams of quick fortunes, attracted him. He came to work. His greatest skill gave him the obvious advantage in the competition for jobs, an advantage that occasionally sparked resentment among the American and the Irish fellow workers. His clannishness and bitter legacy of English-Irish conflict further heightened the animosity. This animosity between the skilled Cornish miner and the initially unskilled Irish was in fact the most explosive internal threat in the mining labor movement of the West. This is my family, the William Barker family of Centerville. They came to the area in the early 1880s. Traveled originally from St. Earth, Cornwall, first to the mines in Dover, New Jersey in 1866. Then to mining activities in the Kewanee Peninsula in Hancock, Michigan in 1875. My grandfather, Samuel Barker, this is my grandfather here. My grandfather, Samuel Barker, and his brother, William, in 1881 headed for Butte, and a new mining area rich in silver. Because there were no railroads between Michigan and Montana, they first traveled to St. Louis, then up the Missouri on a flatboat to Fort Benton, and then rode horseback and stage to Butte. They wrote back to the family in Michigan that Butte was a good camp. The young men lived in one of the camp's many boarding houses. I thought I had a picture of it. Go back. The young men lived in one of the camp's many boarding houses, probably in Centerville with the other Cornish individuals. Because the attraction would be to stay in a neighborhood of the ethnic group that you were a member of. They originally worked at the Alice mine in Walkerville and earned enough money to send for the rest of the family. In 1979, the Barker family of Centerville was honored as one of 17 of Butte's families still having relatives residing in Butte from its beginning. The governor of the state of Montana presented each family with a certificate. Centerville continued its slow growth. It remained outside of the city limits, and as a result, the neighborhood lacked city fire protection and street maintenance. it seems to me Centerville many times was just the black sheep of the family or the bastard child. Nobody wanted to take care of it. I think they thought if they ignored it, it would go away. You know, or the company was always going to take it over. So it did not get all the things it normally would have gotten as a suburb. Following World War I, there was discussions to include Centerville as part of Butte proper. The mayor of Butte at that time and T.J. Bennett, a Centerville business owner, were the only two people who supported the movement to have Centerville be part of Butte. So as you can see, there wasn't a lot of support there. The location of fraternal halls, churches, schools, and retail businesses in the boundaries of Centerville added a cohesiveness to the neighborhood, allowing its immigrant residents to maintain an identity separate from the city of Butte to the south. In 1983, in a column in the Montana Standard entitled Notes from the Archives, an individual asked as to what the old Centerville business district was like. John Hughes, who was the archivist at that time, listed the following establishments. Hennesseys, as far as stores go, they had a Hennessey store and T.J. Bennett's. T.J. Bennett's had a store on the corner of Center and Main. These are his employees out in front of the store. This was one of the paint shops. This is Barber Paint. This is my grandfather's paint shop. And this is on the corner of Main and La Platte. There was also another Hooper Paint. There was a Barker Paint and a Hooper Paint in Centerville. That's the Barker Paint in about 1908. This is the lower part of it, and then they put the living part upstairs. It's a blank screen. Let me go back. Oh, I think I turned it off now.
Uh-oh.
These are some of the establishments that Mr. Hughes listed. As far as stores in Centerville, Hennesseys, T.J. Bennett's. Both of them were dry goods stores. Hennesseys was a branch of the Hennessey store down here in Butte. At least Hennesseys thought that Centerville was well worth putting a branch. As you can see, it says Hennesseys across the top of it. This is the old Mullen house, and I will talk about that later on. But this was no boarding, it was a boarding house for miners. And it was kind of the center. This is a walk down from Center and Main at the time. And it was Hennesseys was attached to it. There were the two paint stores with the Barker Paint and the Hooper Paint. Shoe stores. Mickey Sullivan had a shoe store. Billy Toy had a shoe store. John Paul had a shoe store. There were two barbers, Billy McCarthy, Jimmy Rowe. Meat markets, 3. Dan Harrington had a meat market. Cy Holman had a meat market. And Lester Tagidja had a meat market. There was a Centerville drugstore. There was a J.H. Kuhl Cafe. Bars. We had the Klondike, Boyles, Eagles, Buckley's, Odgers. During Prohibition, the saloons quickly turned into soft drink parlors. Centerville and Walkerville, of course, ignored the rules because they were not considered part of Butte, and their bars were open all the time. They did not turn them into soft drink. Wood and Coal, Monahan Coal Company, Undertaker. See, Beth, I think, listen, Undertaker, if possible, Undertaker in Centerville, which it probably was Richards's, since they were one of the common ones, as having a branch up in Centerville. So as you can see, they were a self-contained community up here. They didn't really need anybody else. But as I previously mentioned, I wanted you to take note of something. Centerville, when I told you Centerville had half of the Cornish and half of the Irish. Okay. The Barber Shops. One barber shop was ran by Mr. McCarthy. Mr. McCarthy was a good Irish Catholic. The other one was run by Jim Rowe, good Cornish Methodist. So you know the people in the community who went to what? The Barker Paint. My family was very much Cornish Methodist, so those people came and bought paint there. The Hoopers were Irish Catholic down the street, so the other group went down there to get their paint. The meat market. You have Dan Harrington with a name like Harrington. I'm sure he's a real good Irish Catholic. He had a meat market. Then you had Lester Tregidja. You know, hey, Cornish names are Tree, Paul, and Pam. That's a good Cornish name, Tregidja. He had the other meat market, so I'm sure that's where the people went. So again, the community becomes, even though it's two ethnic groups, the services that they are providing are very much geared to the ethnic group that is there. Public schools were the Adams School, which I showed you before, which closed in the early 1900s, and the Blaine Public School, which was also known as the Centerville School. The parochial schools at that time, St. Lawrence was in Walkerville, St. Mary's was in Upper Dublin Gulch. They addressed the parochial interest in schooling at that time. Fraternal organizations, again, all in Centerville, were well represented. In 1889, the Sons of St. George fraternal organization was organized and had a large hall in Centerville in the 900 block on North Main. That's the Blaine School when they destroyed it after the earthquake. There's the old St. Lawrence School. There's the Sons of St. George. This is a picture by Bill Weatherly. That was in the 900 block on North Main. It sits right on the corner of Center and Main. St. George was considered the patron saint of the Cornish, and the lodge was founded to provide illness, injury, and death benefits needed by miners and their families, and not provided by the mining company. It was also a place for weekly meetings. On April the 23rd of each year, St. George Day was celebrated, and each week a dance was held at St. George Hall, which was reported to be the best dance floor in the city. Then down the street we have the Ancient Order of Hibernians, the AOH. This was the Irish fraternal group. They had a lodge in the 800 block of North Main. The organization began in 1879 in Walkerville. The overflow from each of these lodges would use the other hall. Both would participate in various Butte holidays. Further south on North Main, and I don't have a picture of that, was the headquarters of the Pierce and Donnelly Fife and Drum Corps. On various holidays, the bands and various military marching units of these three groups marched proudly down Main Street to join the downtown activities. Then they would parade back up the street to their respective halls. Sometimes there would be a spirited competition as to which organization would lead the parade either downtown, down the hill, or up the hill. The Ancient Order of Hibernians at times was able to turn out 800 Irishmen for a parade with units of the Magar, or I guess it's Mar Guard, the Emmett Guard, and the Parnell Rifles. The importance of these groups cannot be overstated. Between 1885 and 1911, the Ancient Order of Hibernians paid out over $30,000 in sick and death benefits to its membership of miners. Cornishmen were welcome in the W.A. Clark mines, which were the Travonia, the Mountain View, the Tramway, the Calusa Parrot, the Original, the Molten, the Black Rock, the Poser, and the Speculator, most of them located in Centerville, not all of them. The mountain view was so exclusively Cornish, it was suggested to be renamed the Saffron Bun, a delicacy of the Cornish. Marcus Daly, in turn, offered jobs to thousands of Irishmen, many who settled alongside the Cornishmen in Centerville, within sight of Daly's Mountain Con mine and a short walk to the Buffalo, the Diamond, the Bell, the Green Mountain, and the Little Mina. One of Butte's most famous boarding houses was the Mullen House. The Mullen House originally started out as the Centerville Hotel, and then it became the Union Hotel, and then it became the Mullen House. And it actually was a boarding house for single miners at the time when it first started. The Mullen House was on North Main Street. It was built in 1888 by Pat Mullins, a Butte entrepreneur and later mayor of Butte. The Mullen House had 125 rooms for single boarders. As married men replaced single men in the mines, the Mullen House lost local clientele, marking a change in living arrangements that brought in apartment houses and duplexes into vogue throughout Butte. Eventually, this predominantly working-class population moved into houses erected from stock plans by the owners themselves or individual carpenters. Families were coming, wives were coming, and so on. However, these houses did not in any way reflect the ethnic origins of their residents. These worker cottages could be built for approximately $750 in 1900. The plan had a small front yard as an environmental buffer from the harsh mining landscaping surrounding the neighborhood. As in most mining towns like Centerville, cost, convenience, and the environment, not architectural style, dictated the design consideration. This is Center Street. This area here, when I was in Centerville, was Pearl Shea's home, and in the front of it she had a small store where we could go down and buy candy and things like that. The wood sidewalks went all the way up. This at one time was an Episcopal church on Center Street. Wow. And my dad played basketball in there. And the floor fell down.
Oh,
It was
jeez.
a two-story and the floor fell in. So then in turn, I don't think they ever rebuilt it, but I think a lot of the people might have gone up to the Trinity Church. I don't know that this is Center Street, and I don't know that Center Street was ever plowed.
It doesn't look like this.
Yeah. Now, at one time, the trolley cars ran up this.
Wow.
Not very long, but I have another picture where you actually can see the trolley tracks going up like this. Did you notice the two-story houses? These were the duplexes coming in. These were the before, and yet on the other side, single-family housings and so on like that. This is, all right, when I told you about a Barker paint and a Hooper paint, oh, come on, get them out. Go back there. This is a Hooper paint right here. And up here, that's the Sons of St. George, you can follow me. And this right in here is probably the corner of Center and Main. This is where the Mullen House stood. And when the Mullen House, when they tore it down, the model cities put low-cost housing in it. This was put up by Kenwood Realty, I think in the 50s. They brought in, and this was low-cost housing. The Mullen Field, this is the Mullen Field. This is Mullen Street, right through here. And It didn't last very long. I don't know whether it was poorly built or what, and it disappeared. And that lot is still there, but some of the new houses coming in are in that area. Centerville's largest Cornish population worshipped at the Trinity Methodist Church, which was built in 1889 and is still standing today. Someone has told me that this church is very much patterned after Methodist churches in Cornwall. And if it is, then it's one of the few architectural buildings in Centerville that has any ethnic significance to it, because people did not build their houses like they had come from Cornwall and so on. The Catholic Church at this time did not exist in Centerville. In 1897, St. Lawrence O'Toole Catholic Church was erected on North Main Street, but that was in Walkerville. In 1900, the school consisted of 4 rooms and a basement was erected. The sisters occupied the basement of the dwelling. In 1904, the sisters' house was erected. I remember growing up in Centerville, we were so excited about the clothing that was hung on the clothesline outside of the sisters' house. I don't know why I'm so enamored with that, but we would always go up to see. It was what?
That was a sin.
Yeah,
If we were Methodists, it didn't make any difference.
yeah.
As religion spiritually divided the community, so did politics, with the Cornish supporting the more conservative candidates and their Irish neighbors voting a straight Democratic ticket. Such divisions were superseded by the occupational and class homogeneity of the community. Centerville was a community unto itself, with all of its required services. My extended family lived in Centerville from 1882 until 1950. My father, Harry Barker, was born and lived in Centerville for over 50 years. My brothers, sisters, and I were all born in Centerville. The last Barker relative living in Centerville died in 2016. The Trinity Church was sold in 2016. Other Barker relatives throughout the early 1900s moved off the hill and are now living out in the flat. I have retired, and I returned to Butte with the hope of documenting early Cornish history in Butte, specifically Centerville's early history and architecture. What I presented today is just a beginning. I will need another brown bag to share with you what growing up in Centerville for my father and myself was like. Thank you, and I'll take any questions you have now.